Hi, everyone. We'll be going live in just 5 minutes, waiting for some more people to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started with VOC and nice Satmetrix. That just sends it on alerts. Live now. 2 minutes, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, 1 minute. We'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, so thanks for joining us, everybody, and for watching us sit still in front of a camera for a few minutes. My name is Whitney Wood. I am the marketing director for nice Satmetrix, and I'm excited to be here with Shane Oren, who will introduce himself in a minute, and we're going to talk with you about trends in voice of the customer as we start heading into 2019.
Yeah, hi everyone. Shane Oren, RVP of Sales for nice Satmetrix, and I'll be here talking to you guys today about those trends as well. So with that, Whitney, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so I think we just wanted to kind of start just by sort of talking about what's happening in the market these days. And VOC, or you can call it VOC, you can call it customer feedback management. It's the sort of area of many names, but a lot going on in the market. So we thought we'd just start by sort of talking a little bit about what is happening in the market and kind of what that means for the space overall.
Sure. So as we start off and look at what's happened this last year in terms of VOC and customer feedback, you look at some big things that have happened. An acquisition of Opinion Lab has happened. An acquisition of Qualtrics just happened for a whopping $8 billion by SAP. So what you'll see is they're getting a lot of traction, and companies are really looking at, with all things are equal, product, it really comes down to price. Well, now price is equal. So now what's next? And it comes down to customer experience. And that's why I think you're seeing the trend in people purchasing these companies and really getting involved. If you had to think about it, there's only a few companies out there that you would back and say, hey, they give great customer experience. Maybe that's Amazon, Costco, maybe it's a Best Buy or Zappos for you guys, but there's very few. So there's a lot of room for improvement here. And Whitney, I think that's why we're seeing the trend in the market that we see today.
Yeah, I think one of the things we often talk about here is that we actually don't see a lot of companies who do customer experience particularly well. So there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of money around it. The addressable market in this space is just huge, but people aren't really doing the things they need to do to really deliver the customer experience that people are looking for, and that's really the point. So that's always interesting to us in the space, that a lot happens, but we don't see like a net improvement in the experience that companies offer, which is actually a real opportunity. So.
Yeah, if you look at the stats these days, 80% of companies think they give great superior customer experience, but the reality is when we talk to their customers, only 8% of companies actually do that. So there is a large room for improvement, and I think we're going to see that trend going into 2019 as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing to remember about that is not just that it's not just a difference of opinion, it really matters. So the people who actually deliver the customer experience that their customers say is great outperform their competitors by just miles. I mean, I never remember the numbers, because when you look at the chart, it's like, woo, really, one's really high and one's really low. And you always want to be in that higher one. So it isn't just something to do because it's a nice thing to do. I think that's something people kind of get swept up in, the customer experience, but it actually is a really strategic business decision that people make to invest in this, and it drives the bottom line in really significant ways. So
yeah, to that, I just want to add on, doing it well and doing it, period. There's very two different categories there, or not doing it, which a lot of companies aren't doing today. But many of you guys have probably flown on Delta or American, United Airlines, and gotten that 45-question survey. 45 questions.
No.
I skipped everything, went right to the end, and it still took me almost 20 minutes to do. That's too long, and that's why customers today are getting survey fatigue. They don't want to answer that next survey because the last one was so long. They don't feel like it was personalized. They didn't get anything out of it. The company didn't say, hey, I heard you. So that's a problem, right? You really need to interact with your customers and let them know you heard what they're saying.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you can be doing customer feedback where you're asking for feedback, but that doesn't actually mean that you are listening effectively to the voice of the customer. And there's a lot of things people do wrong. And the excessively long survey is super common and intensely frustrating, probably always to the people taking the survey, but also to the people asking people to respond to the survey, because they're not getting what they need out of it. At the very least, they have created an annoyed customer by the end of it. So asking questions that you can't immediately act on, or that you won't take action on, and doing that at length is one really common mistake that people make when they think they're doing a good job or making the effort to listen to the voice of the customer. Another one, I think, is failing to account for what you already know about the customer. So tell us who you are. Well, shouldn't you know who I am? I bought your products already. And there's a lot more subtle ways of kind of signaling that you know who your customer is, and also being smart about the questions that you ask based on what you already know.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a good point. We see a lot of people that, you answer these questions from the survey taker side, but what we actually see is the problem is that the people who wrote the survey don't have any customer experience knowledge. They really don't understand what they want out of it, other than, hey, did we do a good job? Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's great, but what does that tell you? If your business and revenue is growing, I know they're happy. What I don't know is, what do they want from it? So I want to know more than, are you happy? I want to know, what can I do differently to keep you as a valued customer, to get you to come back to purchase my airline ticket versus going somewhere else? Is that destination? Is it service? Is it bigger seats? These are things that companies don't know today, and I don't think they're asking the right questions to get there.
Yeah, I think that's really common. And one of the ways that we always counsel our customers to think about the questions that they ask is, well, who's going to be making changes based on these? Who are the people throughout your company who are going to take this information and do something with it to improve the service that they offer, the product that they offer, to improve the way they work with other people in the company, right? They know what they want to know, probably, and would very likely be super engaged with a program that works with them to understand what they need to know, so that the questions and the timing of the questions, because that's another really important thing, can really account for what is it that we're trying to get out of customers that we know would help us make improvements, or critically get rid of blockers to customer loyalty and satisfaction. I think that's really important too.
Yeah, so Whitney, I know we're having just a kind of general conversation here, but as we get into this, and I see people liking the video and talking about it, my concern here is that maybe they don't understand what the difference is between a promoter, someone who just gave us a thumbs up on the video, versus a detractor who had that bad experience.
I'd be delighted to
and
talk
why,
about
and
that.
why it matters. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll talk about that.
So we at Nice Satmetrix, we often use the language of Net Promoter. We're the co-creators of that score way back in the day. It's one of those real kind of industry-defining terms that people kind of throw around and don't always understand. So the way that you, well, I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to say that it's one metric, and we know a really great one because it's a predictor of growth. It's not the only metric that you can use, right? A metric is only as good as its acceptance rate, as the people in your company say it is. So if you have a leadership team that just doesn't think that Net Promoter is where it's at, well, okay, use a different metric. That's okay. But some of the language around Net Promoter is helpful anyway. So the Net Promoter question is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend our company to a friend or colleague? Then you group people according to how they respond. Only 9s and 10s are promoters. And promoters are people who really will, experience shows, actually recommend you to a friend. People who are 7 or 8 are passives, and those are people who are kind of on the bubble and a little bit risky. And then anyone 6 and below is what we call a detractor. The reason that then you subtract the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters, and that's your net promoter score. So the reason that that's so important is because promoters and detractors behave in really different ways. Promoters are cheap. They're really easy to serve because they like you. And they're a source of new revenue because they will recommend you. And a recommended person who becomes a customer, someone who was recommended to you by a promoter, is more likely to become a promoter themselves. So it's a really virtuous cycle there. So you definitely want to maximize the number of people who will and are recommending you to others. They cost you less to serve. They buy more. They bring you more business. These are your golden customers. Whereas detractors on the other end of the spectrum are very likely to complain about you. And people complain like crazy, as we all know and are guilty of. And when they do that, they drive business away from you. They're also much more difficult to serve because they're unhappy. So they're a real drag on your internal productivity and on your service costs. So that's why, from a business perspective, shifting that balance toward promoter is really critical. And while those terms are very specific to Net Promoter Score, that same principle of moving people from a very unhappy and unlikely to recommend you category to the category of I'm all in and I'm going to tell everyone I know about you is a very profitable move for you to make. That's why we talk about it like that.
So as we talk about that, it makes sense to think that you really want to have a program in place to capture the promoters and capture the detractors and then have the ability to follow up with them. So we were talking about the subject is making mistakes. And the problem I see today is people take these 45 question surveys, they took the time to fill it out, they didn't like it, and then nothing happened. They got served the same survey next time they flew. So you do need to follow up. You do need to close the loop. It's probably the most important part of having a program is taking action on it, doing something with the data, not just sitting on it. So that data democracy, getting data to the right people so they can take action and then drive change in your company, which then you'll see in reduction in churn and increase in revenue.
Yep. And there's some really great kind of statistics and findings about how just the simple act of reaching out to someone who gave you feedback can save the business. Just, oh, you really, you actually did want to hear from me. You meant it. And you can even automate some of that and have it be really effective. So making it into a dialogue with customers is a really critical piece of convincing them that you mean it. And then let's talk a little bit about kind of getting the data to people who need it, because I think that's another big mistake that we hear people say. They just, well, I looked at it and then I analyzed it, and then every quarter I present it to somebody. Whoa, every quarter, that's crazy. It should be out there every day to every person in the company who needs it. And if you don't have a system in place that lets you do that, it's just totally prohibitive. So talk a little bit about kind of what we see of customers, or how customers are really pushing the envelope on getting data out to the people who really need it when they need it.
Yeah, so I think you bring up 2 points. One point is data democracy, getting that data out so people can take action on it. But I think the second thing is you really only have 1 or 2 chances to get the data to those people. And so if you don't collect it from the right channels, if you don't get useful data, then it really is less value to go drive change in your organization. So I think we got to talk about the survey collection side of it first. The old way, the email surveys, the paper surveys, these are really declining in response rates, and companies that aren't willing to adopt things like Facebook, things like LinkedIn, using social media, are the ones that are going to be left behind. You need to interact with your customers the way they want to interact with your brand, in an SMS, leaving a voicemail on an IVR that they can just talk. They don't have to go through a bunch of prompts. These are important things to understand. And then now that we've collected the data, we've got it because now we're getting higher response rates because we're using today's technology. Can we then distribute the data differently? And the answer is yes. You're going to give them deeper insights. Now we know where they called into, who they talked to, what product they talked about, why they're unhappy. And we can do things like listen to the conversation. I don't have to ask them if they're happy. I know based on the tone and inflection of the conversation if they're happy. So now I can take action on it in real time, not be delayed. The companies that are out there that are proactive are going to be much farther along in this game than the ones who are reactive. And what we hear in the market is, Shane, we're reactive because it takes us so long to process the data.
Yeah, we get all these open comments, and then I have to sit down and read them, and it takes me a really long time to kind of categorize. Stop! Like you gotta move on and have the technology that lets you do that kind of analysis in an automated way. That's the only way you're going to be able to interact in a much more real-time way with the customers who are giving you feedback. They're the ones who they expect you to get right back to them. Why wouldn't you? So turning speech into insight lets you just leapfrog ahead of people who are still, unfortunately, sitting there with their little spreadsheets tagging and categorizing.
Yeah.
And then the people who are getting the data, oh my God, look what I can see now. So it becomes much more compelling and kind of addictive to them that I need more of that because it's going to help me with the decisions I need to make.
Well, then let's talk about 2 other things. Everyone says omni-channel data collection. You guys watching the video, you're leaving comments on Amazon, on Facebook, on YouTube. All these comments come into companies because you hashtag that company. So they get alerted. The problem is they don't know how to display that in an omni-channel analytics world so they can make sense of what you're saying, so they can start to see trends, and so they can react. And that's something that we do here very seamlessly, is the ability to bring in all the channels into one solution. So as you go forward and you guys are taking surveys and see feedback options in 2019, if you get a 45-question Delta survey, go to the last question where it says, tell us more, and just put your survey's too long, contact Nice Satmetrix. These are things that you as the consumer can do, and as the companies that are also watching this understand that 8, 9 channels, 10 channels to ask for feedback is too many, and that's too many platforms. You should be doing it on a single platform like Nice Satmetrix.
Because I think that's one of the things that people also rightly expect, is that you can have a unified understanding of the experience that they're having. They don't want only the service people to understand that the product is giving them trouble. They want everybody to understand that the whole experience is not what they're expecting. That's what they're at your company for, is the experience you deliver, not the price you charge, not even the product that you are giving. And let's face it, not even just the service, but the whole experience of being your customer. So any just parting thoughts for people as we wrap it up on things they should be looking for? Definitely take your surveys and refer them to us, because we're going to help them out be a little better for you. What else?
I mean, I think as you go into 2019, as you get into Christmas season, keep an open mind when somebody says, hey, do you have a minute? Look for people who've written the survey correctly. Hey, do you have 2 minutes to answer 2 questions? These are things you'll know ahead of time, and then you know what you're getting into. So when you imply best practices are being used, customers take note of that, businesses take note of that, you'll get a lot more of that data. So, I challenge you guys, you go into 2019, take some surveys, give some feedback, understand that not all survey programs are created equal, just as not all survey providers are created equal. The survey, taking the feedback, analyzing it, acting on it, look and see if they're operating on those core pillars of what a program should be, and give them the appropriate feedback.
And if you're in a company that's collecting feedback, I think one of the best first steps you can take is to understand who is getting feedback right now. You'll either be sadly disappointed that not enough people are getting feedback, or perhaps a little bit surprised that too many people are getting feedback, but not centralizing it so that it really leads to understanding. So understand what people are asking of you as a consumer, and understand what you, if you're inside a company, are asking of your customers, and kind of getting that lay of the land can help you take a next step toward improving that.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Well, that's our time on Facebook Live. So thanks for watching us at Nice Satmetrix.
And we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.
Thanks. Take care.